I was 23 when I moved into my first rental home, a small beige house at the end of a cul-de-sac in a peaceful Ohio neighborhood. You know the kind. Families mowing lawns, kids riding bikes, neighbors waving even if they barely know you. My place was one story, with a narrow backyard and a cheap wooden fence separating me from the house next door. That house belonged to a man named Mr. Ellis. I didn't know that name until later, but I remember the first day I ever saw him. I was unloading boxes from my car, sweating under the August sun, when I felt this weird prickling sensation on the back of my neck, like someone was staring. I looked toward the house on my right. There, behind one of his slightly parted blinds, a single eye was watching me. No movement, no blinking, just staring. At first I thought, okay, maybe he's just curious. I'm new. But something about that eye didn't feel right. It didn't look curious. It looked cold. Not angry, not friendly, just empty. I lifted my hand in a small wave. The blinds instantly snapped shut. I remember laughing nervously to myself. Great, perfect, creepy neighbor. Just my luck. What I didn't know was that this man hadn't just been watching me. He had been waiting. That night, around 1:30 a.m., I woke up to a faint sound. Crunch. Like someone stepping on gravel. My bedroom window faced the side of the house, the same side where Mr. Ellis's house stood about 10 feet away. At first, I thought maybe it was a raccoon or something. But then I heard it again. Crunch. Crunch. Slow, heavy steps. I sat up and looked toward my window. The curtains were thin, the kind landlords put up when they don't want to spend money, so I could see the shape of a tall figure walking slowly across my side yard. The silhouette stopped, right in front of my window. My heart froze. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The figure stood there for a few seconds, then continued walking toward the backyard and disappeared from view. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, I checked outside. No footsteps, no disturbed gravel, nothing. Like it never happened. But this was only the beginning. The next day, I called the police. I told them about the footsteps, the staring, the late-night pacing, all of it. 2 officers arrived that afternoon. A younger one and a veteran-looking guy with a thick mustache. They knocked on Mr. Ellis's door. No answer. They knocked again, louder. Still nothing. Sometimes neighbors just keep to themselves, the older cop said. We'll file a report, but unless he trespasses or harms you, there's not much we can do. I remember feeling stupid. I kept thinking, maybe I'm being paranoid. But as the officers left, the younger one paused and lowered his voice. Listen, if anything else happens, even if it seems small, call us, okay? We get weird cases in this area sometimes. Weird cases. What did that mean? He didn't stay long enough for me to ask. 2 nights later, I heard something that still gives me chills. My back door handle jiggled, very slowly, very lightly, like someone was testing it. I froze. The jiggling stopped for a moment, then started again, this time harder. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. As I whispered the situation, I heard something else. A low, slow exhale from the other side of the door, like someone was pressing their face against it. Then, clear as day, I heard a voice. Not loud, not threatening, just unsettling. A whisper. "I know you're awake." My blood turned to ice. I backed away from the door until I hit the kitchen counter. The operator told me to stay on the line. Police were on the way. Suddenly, a loud bang on the door. Then another. Then another. Like someone was slamming their entire body into it. I thought the glass was going to shatter. Then, silence. By the time the police arrived, whoever was there was gone. No footprints, no marks, nothing wrong with the door. Like I imagined the entire thing. But I knew what I heard. I knew that voice. It was Mr. Ellis. After that night, I bought a cheap outdoor camera and installed it facing my backyard. The first 2 nights, nothing. But on the third night, something finally appeared. Around 2:41 a.m., the camera picked up movement. A tall figure walking from the left side of the screen, slowly nearing the back door. He approached, stood perfectly still, then tilted his head. The way he tilted it made my stomach twist, like he was listening for something. Then he leaned closer to the door, so close his nose was almost touching the glass. I turned the volume on the video all the way up. At first, I heard nothing but static. Then, quietly, "I know you're awake." I nearly threw the phone across the room. It wasn't imagination. It wasn't paranoia. It was real. I called the police again. When they arrived, I showed them the footage. Both officers went pale. The older cop whispered, "We've seen this before." Then he left to call someone on his radio. The younger cop stood guard with me, keeping me inside. That's when he finally explained. "Your neighbor," the young officer said, "has been reported multiple times, but we can never catch him doing anything illegal." I asked, "What do you mean?" He sighed and continued, "He has a habit of watching people, especially younger people who live alone. Sometimes he walks around houses at night, sometimes he tries doors, but he always disappears before we get there." I felt sick. "Why hasn't he been arrested?" The officer clenched his jaw. "Because every time we talk to him, he acts normal, polite, quiet, and there's never enough evidence to charge him. Plus," he paused, "plus, every time someone files a report, something happens to them afterward." "What kind of something?" I asked. He didn't answer. "Your neighbor," the young officer said, "has been reported multiple times, but we can never catch him doing anything illegal." I asked, "What do you mean?" He sighed and continued, "He has a habit of watching people, especially younger people who live alone. Sometimes he walks around houses at night, sometimes he tries doors, but he always disappears before we get there." I felt sick. "Why hasn't he been arrested?" The officer clenched his jaw. "Because every time we talk to him, he acts normal, polite, quiet, and there's never enough evidence to charge him. Plus," he paused, "plus, every time someone files a report, something happens to them afterward." "What kind of something?" I asked. He didn't answer. After the officers left that night, I sat in my living room with every light on. I couldn't stop replaying that whisper in my mind. "I know you're awake." I kept checking the backyard camera every few minutes. Nothing. But I couldn't shake the feeling he was still out there, watching, waiting. Around 4:10 a.m., exhaustion finally took over. I laid down on the couch, keeping my phone in my hand. I must have drifted off, because suddenly, thud, a loud noise shook the house. I shot upright, heart hammering. It came from the attic. But my house didn't have a finished attic, just a crawl space with weak wooden boards and insulation. I grabbed the nearest thing I could use as a weapon, a metal flashlight, and climbed the hallway ladder up to the crawlspace access hatch. I pressed my ear against the wood. Silence. Then, Kirk. Like someone shifting their weight up there. My breath caught in my throat. Was someone in? The same two officers from earlier showed up. The younger guy looked frustrated, but concerned. The older one looked exhausted, like he'd seen this before and already knew how it would go. I heard someone in the attic, I told them. A loud thud, then movement. I'm sure of it. The officers exchanged a look. The older one sighed. All right, we'll check. He grabbed a flashlight and went up the ladder. I stood in the hallway with the younger officer. He kept his hand on his holster, eyes scanning the dark corners of the house like he didn't trust what might be hiding inside. From inside the crawlspace, the older officer called out, "Nothing here! No footprints! No disturbance in the insulation!" He came down shaking his head. You probably just heard the house settling. I wanted to scream. I knew I heard footsteps. Before they left, the younger officer pulled me aside again. Listen, keep your doors locked tonight, both of them, and don't sleep near any windows. I swallowed hard. Why? What aren't you telling me? He hesitated. The next morning, something strange happened. I went to do laundry in the basement, a place I rarely visited because it felt humid, cramped, and old. As I walked down the stairs, I saw something on the concrete floor that made my blood run cold. Footprints. Bare footprints. Dirt-covered, leading from the laundry machines across the room to the small crawl space door under the stairs, a door I had never opened, a door that should have been covered in thick dust, except it wasn't. Someone had been inside it. I stepped closer, shining my phone light over the footprints. They weren't mine. They were way too big. I got down on my knees and touched one of them. Still slightly damp, meaning someone had walked through here recently. Maybe last night. Maybe while I was asleep. My chest tightened. I backed away, shaking, and slammed the basement door shut behind me. I didn't call the police this time. I already knew they wouldn't find anything. I needed proof. Real proof. And I needed to understand exactly how someone got into my basement without breaking in. There were no broken windows, no unlocked doors, no damaged locks. So how? I shoved a heavy chair under the basement door handle and stayed upstairs for the rest of the day. That night, I set up 2 cameras, one facing the backyard, one facing the basement crawl space door. Whatever was happening, I would catch it. Or at least, that's what I thought. Around 2:57 a.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the camera app with shaky hands. It was the basement camera. At first, the footage showed nothing, just the dim laundry room illuminated by a single bulb. Then, the crawlspace door slowly cracked open. A hand emerged, a pale, veiny hand, followed by a shoulder, then a head. It was Mr. Ellis. His clothes were filthy, like he'd been crawling through dirt. His hair was greasy, sticking to his forehead, but his eyes, God, his eyes, wide, unblinking, like someone who hadn't slept in days. He crawled out silently on all fours, moving with this slow, unnatural precision, like an animal. He stood up, stiff, jerky movements, then turned directly toward the camera. And he smiled. A long, unnatural smile that made my stomach twist. He pressed one finger against his lips. Shh. Then the screen went black, static, cut off, like he'd reached up and smashed the camera. I dropped my phone. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. He wasn't just watching me from his window. He wasn't just pacing around my house. He wasn't just trying my doors. He was inside my house. He had been inside for God knows how long. I dialed 911 again, voice trembling so badly the operator could barely understand me. This time, more than 2 officers arrived, 4 squad cars. They searched the entire basement, the crawl space, the attic, the yard, the perimeter. Nothing. It was like he vanished again. But one of the officers, someone I hadn't seen before, reacted strangely when he heard the name Mr. Ellis. He froze, looked at the other officers, and said, "He wasn't supposed to be there anymore." I stepped closer. "What do you mean? What does that mean?" The officer cleared his throat, suddenly stiff. "That property has been vacant for months. The owner passed away last winter. The house is bank-owned right now." I felt my stomach drop. "That can't be right," I said. "I've seen him. He lives there." The officer shook his head slowly. "No one lives there. That place doesn't even have running water or electricity." I felt dizzy, cold. "And the man you're describing," he continued, "we dealt with him before. He was evicted by the bank after refusing to leave. He claimed he still lived there, even though the house was condemned." I whispered, "Where is he now?" The officer hesitated. "He disappeared 3 months ago." I stared at him. "What do you mean, disappeared?" "He left the property during the eviction, walked into the woods behind the neighborhood, never came back. We searched for days. No tracks, no body, nothing. Like he just vanished." My hands were shaking uncontrollably now. It didn't make sense. I had seen him. He had spoken to me. He had been inside my house. I asked, "What was his name?" The officer pulled out a small notebook. "Harold Ellis." No. No way. The man watching me wasn't some missing vagrant. He was real. I saw him with my own eyes. I recorded him on camera. "I have footage," I said desperately. "I have proof." I opened the app, and all the footage from the basement camera was gone. Every file deleted, like someone wiped it clean. The officer gave me a sad, tired look. "You should consider staying somewhere else for a night or 2. I didn't stay somewhere else. I should have. But part of me refused to run. I wasn't going to abandon my home because of a neighbor who shouldn't exist. That night, I slept with every light on again. Around 3:20 a.m., I heard something that froze my blood. A whisper from the vent above my bed. "You're awake." I bolted upright and stared at the vent. Something moved behind it. Something crawling, very slowly. Then a finger poked through the grate, scratching.